Diane. My name is Diane. Yes, and I'm 17 years old, or at least I was back when I first stepped foot on this hell on Earth. Judging by the reflection I can see of myself through the phone I'm using to write this, I still look like a teen, so I think I'm still more or less right about my age. But enough about me. The purpose of this written document is for it to serve as a proof of my existence and as a warning for anyone to not commit the same mistake Chloe and I committed when we foolishly decided to enter the accursed building. I'd tell you where it's located, but I don't trust my memory enough to provide a precise location aside from it being somewhere in France. I could ask Chloe, but I'm afraid that won't do. Let's just say she's not in the mood to answer any questions right now. It's kind of fascinating how I can still recall the events that led me to the moment rather vividly, despite all the details I'm already starting to forget. That's why I must tell my story to whoever is willing to read it while I still can, because I cannot guarantee that will still be the case tomorrow. My friends and I were what you could call casual horror enthusiasts. In other words, we weren't like some other people which were highly passionate about a particular horror novel or movie franchise or anything like that. But we did enjoy to occasionally gather together, make some popcorn, and watch a horror film once in a while, as well as watching creepy web series and creepypastas on the internet. That was the kind of horror we liked the most, because it felt more relatable in a strange way. Like it could happen to anyone who was just walking around an unnerving environment filming it with their phone or a cheap camera. That vibe is what made that type of horror uniquely scary in a way big blockbuster movies could not achieve. And it was that relatability and accessibility of that low-budget horror media that made us dream of making our own creepy short films someday. The opportunity finally came to us when our teacher assigned us a group project which consisted on shooting a short film that had to take place in a remarkable corner of our town with a particularly interesting history or function associated to it. And so, Chloe, Juliet, Camille, and I started brainstorming ideas. We all agreed our film should be a horror film, but we could not come to an agreement regarding where it should be filmed. We could film it in that forest right outside the town. It has an eerie atmosphere, and I've heard it has a history with some messed up things having happened there, Camille suggested. No. I promised myself years ago I would never step foot on that place. Not again. Juliet nervously protested, going pale the second the forest was mentioned before keeping silent and thoughtful for a few seconds. She was a good friend, but she was somewhat of an introvert and could be a bit of a weirdo at times. I hadn't seen her so agitated since that time she suffered a full-on panic attack and broke into tears at a slumber party after I pointed out a hallway in my house looked like a dark tunnel. She probably had her reasons, but I'd be lying if I told you I knew what these were. Okay. Any other ideas? I asked. Oh, I know. We could do it in that building located in the outskirts of town. I think it's abandoned, and it looks to be the perfect setting for our horror project, Chloe said. We all agreed Chloe's proposal was great, and so we decided to meet after school and inspect the building first before properly starting to film our short film. However, right after we had made our choice, we realized how little we actually knew about the place. It looked like a generic rectangular building, unsuspectingly sitting atop a hill in the outskirts of town. It had been there for as long as I or anyone I knew could muster. Countless local children had asked about the mysterious building to countless adults across the town for years, but no one was able to provide any relevant information about the place other than the fact it existed. The situation would be understandable if the building had been constructed long before any of the town's current residents were alive to witness it, but it didn't really look to be that old. I had always speculated it might have been from around the 1950s or 1960s, judging by its aesthetic. This wouldn't exactly make it a new building, but it would surely still be recent enough for plenty of people still living in present day to have lived during its construction and to at least know a fraction of its history, and yet it was as if the whole town had collectively forgotten all about it and had accepted its existence as something as natural and unquestionable as the hill it stood on. It was precisely this mysterious, almost mystical context surrounding the place which convinced my friends and I it would make for the perfect setting for our project. Aren't the others coming? I asked Chloe upon arriving at our designated meeting spot, and seeing she was the only one there aside from me. Camille says she forgot she had to babysit her neighbor's kid, and Juliet has to go somewhere with her mother. They've told me they'll come with us the day we'll actually begin to film the project, but since we're only going there today to check it out beforehand, they decided they had more important things to do. Or in other words, they've chickened out, Chloe explained jokingly. And thus, Chloe and I climbed up the hill in the outskirts of town and approached the ominous abandoned building. It was a large rectangular-shaped, two-story building with 2 rows of boarded-up windows. It was coated with a layer of orange paint that looked to have once been bright and vibrant, but it was clear the passage of time and the years of neglect had taken a toll on it, as it had since turned dull and dry. So much so that a substantial portion of it had either peeled off the walls and fallen off, or was in the process of doing so. The large wooden door at the front of the building was safeguarded by a withered and rusty lock that prevented us from entering, or at least it did until Chloe started to kick it repeatedly, again and again and again, until the lock fell to the ground and the door was locked no more. Isn't this kind of illegal? I mean, we've just brought down a locked door using force, I uttered, feeling slightly concerned. Diane, please. It's been so long since someone cared about this place, nobody in town even remembers anymore. Not even the local police. You can't break a law in a place even the people that enforce the law have forgotten about. Chloe assured as I took a deep breath, and we both marched inside the abandoned building. The inside of the building was even more ominous than the outside. It was a series of long hallways branching out into multiple small rooms, most of which were empty and served an unclear purpose. It felt disturbing, but also serene in an odd way. This will be an awesome setting for our short film. We're most likely the first people to walk around here in decades. Our friends, the other 2. I pity them for missing out on this. Chloe excitedly exclaimed. Don't you mean Camille and Juliet? I replied in concern. Oh, yeah, Camille and Juliet. I'm sorry. My brain collapsed for a second there. She uttered and nervously giggled afterwards. And Chloe just randomly forgot the names of 2 of her best friends. She had never shown any signs of having a weak memory before, and she's known Camille since kindergarten. Juliet moved to our town 2 years later, but still, Chloe and I hung out with both of them almost every day. This was the first time something like this happened to her, and it came so suddenly I couldn't help but feel alarmed. We roamed the building's desolate ground floor for a while without finding anything worth pointing out. Just more empty rooms and corridors, until we stumbled into a staircase that seemingly led to the building's upper floor. However, we didn't immediately direct our attention to it, as there was something else right next to the staircase which instantly left us paralyzed the moment we saw it. It was a sentence crudely written on a wall which read, "If you can still remember where the exit is, get out of here while you still have the chance." Hey Diane, you do remember where the exit is, right? Chloe worryingly uttered as I was still in the shock processing the message we had read. Of course, Chloe. It's, I replied as I struggled to come up with an answer, and I stared at the network of branching pathways and secluded chambers we had been traversing for the past 30 minutes or so. Now that I was staring at them like that, I realized the building's interior looked to be much bigger than I had originally expected when Chloe and I first saw it from the outside, although I honestly couldn't tell if it was just my paranoid memory playing tricks on me, or if it was something else. Thump, thump, thump. An ominous sound suddenly echoed from upstairs, as I was still trying to formulate an answer to Chloe's question. It sounded like footsteps. Both Chloe and I shuddered when we heard them in the distance. Listen, why don't we go to the upper floor? Maybe those sounds are from some urban explorers who came here before we did, and they can help us find the exit, Chloe suggested. How? Don't you remember the door was locked before we came here? I reminded her. No, I didn't remember. Chloe replied in a tone that made it sound like she was uttering that to herself as much as she was saying it to me. As much as I wanted to search for the exit and go home, I knew I had completely forgotten its location, or what path we had taken to reach that part of the building, or how big the place was. It was clear searching for the exit would only get us even more lost and confused, and so, having backed ourselves into a corner, we both silently nodded to each other and climbed up the staircase. While the ground floor was characterized by how barren and serene it was, the upper floor was quite the opposite. Its walls were filled to the brim with messages, much like the one we had found on the ground floor. I'd cry for my mom if I still remembered her. The only thing I'll never forget is my regret to have come here. How much time has passed outside? Did my previous life even happen? Despite the obvious signs of human presence, there seemed to be no sign of the source of those mysterious sounds which resembled footsteps we had heard earlier. Diane, you need to take a look at this, Chloe said as she perplexedly stared at a collection of dozens of missing posters placed together on a wall like a mural. The posters depicted various teenage boys and girls, all of them with face expressions that clearly indicated they weren't having a good time. They didn't exactly look to be in physical pain, but they were certainly in discomfort, as if they knew they were regretting the decision to have entered the building, and were now sure they were trapped and weren't going to get out of there, or see their loved ones anytime soon. Beneath the images of the boys and girls themselves were written the words, missing, name forgotten, age forgotten. Thump, thump, thump. The footsteps from earlier could be heard again, but this time they were significantly louder than before, and they grew even louder with each passing second, indicating whoever was the cause of them was getting increasingly close to our position. Hello? I shouted but got no answer. A pale, ominous figure revealed itself coming out of a nearby chamber seconds later. At a first glance, it seemed to have the overall appearance of a human, a teenage boy to be more precise, with an average height for what boys his age and a relatively slender complexion. His hair was brown, curly, and disheveled. It wasn't exactly short, but it wasn't excessively long in comparison with the names Chloe and I sported. However, upon closer inspection, it became clear there was something horribly wrong with him. His skin was unnaturally pale, and his eyes seemed to permanently stare into a void only he could see, as if he was caught in a trance and his body spontaneously twitched every few seconds. It was then I realized his face looked very similar to one depicted in one of the missing posters we had just found. Only the face from the poster did not look nearly as sickly and decrepit. My gut feeling was urging me to stay away from him, but Chloe insisted in trying to talk to him and asking him for help. Excuse me? My friend and I have entered this building because, well, I can't remember it clearly right now, but we got lost and we don't know how to get out. Can you help us? Chloe asked the mysterious boy after we both stared at him for a couple seconds as he roamed around the upper floor, seemingly without any rhyme or reason. Upon hearing Chloe's voice, the boy suddenly began to grunt and aggressively put his hands on his head, as if he was in pain from a really bad headache, or was suffering a mental breakdown. He then turned to look at us and subsequently let out a scream unlike any I had heard before. It sounded like a terrifying mix of a painful moan and an angry yell. Run! I shouted to Chloe before we started sprinting through the halls as that creature began advancing towards us, moving in an abnormal, almost ghastly manner. His movements were erratic and seemed to have no regard for the laws of physics as he rapidly advanced in short bursts, almost as if he was a cartoon character whose animation frames were not complete, leading to unnatural and incoherent movements that almost made it seem like he was teleporting. Chloe and I frantically rushed to a small room with a wooden door and locked ourselves inside. We could hear the boy right outside the door as he twitched and growled. He then began violently banging on the door and attempting to turn the door handle several times, but Chloe and I managed to hold out with all our strength. "Who are you? What do you want from us? We just want to go home. Please let us leave, and we promise we'll never come back to this building ever again. I swear," I begged to the boy from the other side as the door, as Chloe and I broke into tears. But then, as if the creature had actually listened to me, the banging on the door and the loud growls suddenly ceased. Thump, thump, thump. Those dreaded footsteps could be heard again, but this time, they seemed to be getting farther away, from us rather than closer. Unbelievably, it appeared the creature was leaving us alone. For now. My phone was laying on the floor. It had most likely fallen off my pocket in the middle of that commotion with the boy. It was a good thing it did, as it actually reminded me I was carrying it with me all along. We're trapped. In here. This hellish place. I don't know how or why, but it's making us forget about our lives, so it can imprison us and turn us into mindless shells with no identity or purpose. I'm even starting to forget my home address. We're gonna be stuck in here forever. Diane, I want to say sorry. Before I forget, it was my stupid idea to have come here. Chloe uttered as she sat in a corner of the room and sobbed while she cradled her necklace in her hands, which her mother had recently gifted to her on her 17th birthday. Meanwhile, I quickly grabbed my phone and opened the text messaging app. I searched for the contacts of our two friends whose names I had already forgotten, but I was then reminded they were called Camille and Juliet thanks to their contacts, which I have saved in my phone. They were the only people who knew we had gone to the abandoned building, so if there was anyone from the outside world who could help us, it was them. Chloe and I are in the abandoned building. We're trapped inside. We need your help. I texted them. I'm sorry, but I don't recognize your number, so either you've texted the wrong person by mistake, or you're a troll trying to pull a prank on me. Camille replied. Who are you and how did you get my number? Juliet followed. What? Come on, I'm Diane. This isn't a joke. Chloe and I are in danger. We got attacked. Seriously, I'm begging you to help us. I nervously texted them back. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw their replies. They acted as if they had forgotten about us. Nice try, prankster. But next time, try not to impersonate someone I actually know. Camille answered. I've never met anyone with those names, and believe me, I've been around for quite a while. Juliet replied. What was my name again? Chloe faintly asked in a rough, feeble tone. The kind you can only hear from someone who has lost all hope and is just waiting for the inevitable. Chloe. I replied. Thanks, friend. She uttered back. You're welcome. Oh, and my name's Diane. I clarified before letting out a forced smile in an attempt to make her feel better, which she returned with a forced smile of her own. Thump, thump, thump. Sounds like he's coming back. Thump, thump, thump. Thump, thump, thump. Thump. And there's more of them this time.